Welcome to Vacation Station, hosted by Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazines.com.
Welcome, everyone. On today's show, we've got Reghan Cloudman joining us. She is the Public Affairs Specialist for Arapahoe and Roosevelt National Forests and Pawnee-National-Grassland up in Colorado, pretty much like the northeastern and north central section of the state of Colorado. And she's joining us to give us an overview of the Pawnee-National-Grassland today. And this area is known for bird watching and hiking, camping, all kinds of good stuff. And you can learn more if you go to the National Forest website. It is fs.usda.gov. And I believe if you go to /ARP, that will connect you to that whole region. So welcome, Reghan. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Now, do I have your website right? For
that was correct.
Yay,
yep,
yay, I win. I've been going on your website and just looking at, and you sent some amazing photos to us of the whole region. Just looks so beautiful and so diverse. So I know we're going to talk about the grasslands, and then later in the year, people are going to hear all about the National Forest, Arapahoe and Roosevelt. But it seems that if someone came up to your region of Colorado, they're going to get everything from like the prairies into forests, into snow, like a very diverse experience.
Yes, absolutely. Diverse topography and diverse wildlife, and just a lot to see and do. And people, I think, typically think of Colorado and they think of the mountains, which is true, but they sometimes forget that we have these beautiful prairies as well for people to enjoy.
Oh, yeah, and that's the thing, and so the prairie, I was reading up, it's actually known as a short grass plains, like part of the short grass plains and even part of the Great Plains of America.
Yeah, so we have lots of different national forests in the U.S. Forest Service that we manage, but the Pawnee in particular is a short grass prairie. So, you don't see really tall grasses growing out there, but it also means that it gives you ample opportunity to see a lot of wildlife too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's nice. And so the location of the Pawnee National Grassland, and that's so interesting because, we have national seashores, national trails, national forests, and you don't hear about a national grassland that often. So it's really great to focus on that and also the importance. I kind of look at grasslands like the importance of a wetland, right? It's just as important that we protect these areas.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
yep, definitely.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely, not only does it have that unique wildlife that depends on it, but there's also a lot of traditional uses. You're going to see, if you're out there, and particularly in the summer, you're going to see cattle grazing, and the land is really intermixed with a lot of ranch land out there and families who have been there for generations and generations. So it's just a really unique kind of place.
Yeah, because I was reading that it actually was part of the Dust Bowl even. I mean, so the history goes back to people ranching up there for years, and that you can even see some of there's like you can actually see museums and some historic cemeteries and things like that in the region.
Yep, absolutely. And we have an old implementation and farm museum at the located at our recreation area there by the campground, so people can kind of see stuff that was used out there when folks were trying to farm. And it has a really long history of Native American folks, as well as then the Dust Bowl era and people trying to farm it and it just not working. And so lots of that land getting turned back over to the federal government, and then it eventually becoming our Pawnee National Grassland.
How neat. And so you're up like almost touching Wyoming, right? So I first found out about you from our interview with Jennifer Finch and Amy Dugan, Jennifer from Weld County and Amy from Greeley, the visitor bureau out there. So if you can go to visit greeley.org, and you can also go to discoverweldcounty.com, and beautiful region. And as soon as we saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, we need to come out here. But you're right at the top of the state, right?
We are, and we are located, our main office is about an hour north of Denver, and from there you can get to all of the different activities, and just located north of Greeley, and then west of a small community called east of a small community called Alt, And we stretch over a really wide area. The grassland is broken up into an east unit and a west unit, with different topography on both sides, which is kind of interesting. The further east you go, the more diverse topography you get, with chalk bluffs and that sort of thing, and fewer people. The west side is closer to this Front Range area, and so sees a little bit more use, and is where some of our recreation is based, and then some of the other recreation is based over on that eastern unit.
Okay, and now with the grassland, what about the seasons? Because I know that it's Colorado. Are you going to get big snow on the grasslands, or is there a better time of year to go out there if you're going to go bird watching or hiking?
So spring is definitely the most popular time. It's when you're going to see a lot of those migratory birds. They're birds there year round, but spring is definitely the most popular time, I think, for folks. It's also before it gets hot. It can get pretty hot out there in the summer, and as well as in the winter, it does get some snow, for sure, but it's, not going to be like you might see up in the mountains. Fall is also, a lovely time to be out there again, just because the weather's really nice that time of the year. But people use it year round for sure. And one thing we always warn people, though, is, it's not like there's not a bunch of paved highways out there. You're out in a rural area, so the roads are, gravel and dirt, and it can get kind of slick out there sometimes in the spring. So that's the one real safety warning we have for folks if they're going to visit in the springtime.
Now, you're talking about there's campgrounds out there, so are there like facilities like restaurants, or should people be packing their own food and water and things like that?
There are a few amenities, but not very many. We always encourage folks to head out with a full tank of gas and make sure they have plenty of water. Just because, like I said, there are a few here and there, but it is pretty sparse out there.
Okay, so take your picnic, and so you can go camping. So stargazing, what's that like out there? Do you have those beautiful dark skies at night?
Yep, absolutely. Because there's not a ton of population living out there and a lot of businesses, you've kind of got these large ranches for the most part, intermixed with that public land. It's a great opportunity to do stargazing. It's a really popular activity out there. And people can camp. They can disperse camp throughout the grassland, but the other thing that they can do is visit the Crow Valley Recreation Area, and it is a developed campground. So there you're going to find restrooms and picnic tables and that sort of thing for folks to enjoy.
Oh, nice. And now the bird thing, I know that this is some place that people flock, birds and people flock from around the world to come out there, and you can actually see your state bird, the lark bunting, and oh man, those are beautiful. I've never, I was like, that's how I learned about the bird, is learning about the grasslands. And so tell us a little bit about the kind of birds people can expect. Do you have any birds of prey?
We definitely have raptors out there. That is one of the things that, we manage for. There aren't a lot of trees out there. So it's a little bit different than some people think, but there are definitely a lot of raptors. You might see red-tailed hawks and other birds out there. And there's lots of unique birds. One of the things that we manage for in particular is the mountain plover, and they actually nest on the ground. And so we do management specifically like prescribed fires to help maintain their habitat and what they look for, and help them to thrive a little more. So you got to look where you step, because you might definitely find a nest or two out there while you're walking around. And we also have just a ton of different birds. The really cool thing is we have a self-guided tour of birding on the Pawnee-National Grassland, and we have a brochure people can get. It's available on our website, so folks can learn about what they might see out there, tips for viewing, and just a little more information about what they might do and see out there at each of the stops.
Now, I also heard that you have a raptor nesting site. Is that something people are able to view? It's an area called Chalk Bluffs.
Yeah, so the kind of main hiking trail out on the Pawnee is the Pawnee Buttes, and a lot of people, when they think of the Pawnee-National Grassland, they think about the Pawnee Buttes, and they're these two large chalk bluffs that raise up on the landscape in contrast to the plains, and they're very beautiful. And we have a trail and a lovely trailhead where there's picnic tables and kind of a shade covering area where folks can sit, and restrooms and a parking area, and you can go and you can hike. A portion of that trail is closed in spring, early summer to protect nesting raptors. We typically have raptors that are nesting there on the chalk bluffs, and so folks can get their binoculars out and might be able to see something, but we definitely keep folks away from there just to protect any new raptors that might be starting to call the Pawnee their home.
Now, what about the wildlife? And that's nice that you keep that, so that balance for the raptors, because I think, that's the beauty of our public lands is, that balance between people. It's a coexistence. We have to watch out for each other, and that's nice that you can see them, but kind of give them that distance and that privacy almost. But now, what about wildlife? Because I know here in southern Arizona we have a grassland, but it's a semi-desert grassland. And it's really interesting. It's a National Wildlife Refuge, Buenos Aires, and it went from ranching. It's kind of interesting. Almost a very similar story. This is an old ranch, and they decided to do ranching because of when the railroads came in, and it really didn't work very well out there. And in the process, actual native plants started growing in places that they're not supposed to. They overplanted mesquite trees, and the grasslands became very invasive. So they do burnings like what you're talking about for the plovers. They do these burnings, and you start seeing all the forbs come back, and this, what the true grassland is. So they're always working on that. But through that, and by bringing the grasslands back, we have got pronghorn coming back now, which is really exciting to see this whole program. So do you see that happening as you do these burns that, definitely for the birds you were talking about, but do you have wildlife that is flourishing from doing that?
Well, the burns are definitely targeted for those mountain plovers, but others, of course, can benefit from prescribed burning. You mentioned pronghorn, and that is, when you head out, that's the wildlife that I always see when I head out there. Cool. There's definitely lots of pronghorn, and they're just beautiful to watch running through the national grassland. You're going to see other things, and there's prairie dog towns out there, and then sometimes in prairie dog towns that have been abandoned, you might see burrowing owls popping their head out of those burrows that the prairie dogs had made. You might also see jackrabbits. That's always kind of a fun one to see out there, and badgers. So there's definitely, driving around, one of the really cool things about the grassland is that you can see for a long way. So you have the opportunity to spot the wildlife, even just from your car on the road, where sometimes if you're in the mountains, there's a lot of cover for that wildlife, and it might be harder to spot. So that's definitely one of the neat parts of the grassland, is getting that chance to see wildlife out there.
Do you get deer?
Sometimes, not nearly as much as we have the pronghorn.
And the pronghorn, that's the thing, because when you hear the song where the deer and the antelope play, aren't the pronghorn the antelope, and they're not related to deer at all. They're different completely the way they.
Yeah, they're definitely different. Yep.
Yeah. And what about fox and coyotes and things like that?
Yep, we do. We definitely have those out there as well. I have yet to see. I don't think I've seen a fox out there myself, but I know that they are out there. And actually, the last time I was out on the grassland, I got to see a coyote. So, cool. So yeah, you're never sure what you're going to spot when you go out there, but the odds are very high you are going to see something.
So then it's pretty flat, so the trail's got to be easy for people compared to I know we're going to talk about the forest soon with you too, but so this is going to be a little different hiking wise.
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to be a different experience. And we only have a couple designated hiking trails out there. The one I mentioned on the east side, the Pawnee Buttes, which I think is just a beautiful place to go for a hike. And it is. It's definitely not going to be an arduous kind of activity for folks. And then out in our Crow Valley Recreation Area where the campground is, there are a couple trails that lead out of that campground where folks can go birding. Again, there's where you're going to actually see some trees, is around that campground versus out in other areas. And so it's often a really good place to go for birding. But there's also just 193,000 acres of public land out there, and so there are you can hike and explore across that landscape, kind of as much as you want on foot. So there's also just a great opportunity to explore.
That's a lot of acreage out there, man, and I love that. So one thing I did want to ask, especially because of it being such a birding place, and you have plovers. They're mountain plovers. Now that's a whole new one for me. We have some like little wetland spots or springs. Here we call them cienagas, but everyone's got a different name. Do you have any water features in the land out there in the prairie?
Well, it kind of depends on how the weather's going. This spring, you could definitely find water out there. Some years we don't have nearly as much. So there are streams that go through, and some natural areas where water will collect. There's not nearly as there's not a ton. It's definitely the arid west. It's definitely a drier area, but on a wet year, you can definitely find places, and those are often good spots. That's maybe where you're going to find a couple trees, and you might be lucky enough to find a raptor up in the trees. So, but on a dry year or later in the summer, there's not a lot of water out there.
Okay, so yeah, I think spring sounds good too. Like especially with the birds coming in, and then the wildflowers. So that's got to be a treat for people. Because that's something I think people don't even realize with that grasslands and prairies do have amazing wildflowers.
We do, and it's so fun. Every once in a while, it will look like a blanket of white flowers out there on a really good, unique year where, and I'm totally drawing a blank on what the wildflower is. I think it might be the primrose, and you just see white forever. That only happens once in a while, but you can usually still find those flowers out there. But there is just a plethora of different wildflowers. And right now, this kind of early part of June, late part of May is often kind of our peak time, but they start, they'll start blooming potentially in April and then continue on until it reaches its peak around now. So spring is definitely a great time to go out there and see all the flowers. And then we also have cactus that bloom that are beautiful. So just a lot of color and a lot of neat things to see. And, there's also come fall, you think about fall colors and you think about the trees, but the grasses in the fall are also really beautiful out there.
That's true because grasses do that change of color, and so and just to see, because then you get those little breezes, so that's really beautiful. But it's interesting you say you have cactus. I just didn't think that you had cactus up there. Right?
They're tiny. They're tiny cactus. That they're small and they're on the ground, so not like a sequoia or something that people might think of. In Arizona, where you're going to have those tall, big cactus.
Yeah, we have the saguaros. Yeah, the saguaros.
Saguaros. Yep. Sorry, that's what I meant.
They are massive. But are they more like little barrel cactus, or are they going to be like little paddle kind of like hedgehog?
Kind of like a pincushion.
Oh, okay, yeah. So little. Wow. So do they bloom kind of after the other wildflowers, or amongst at the same time?
I think they're usually a little bit later, and they'll be yellow and pink. They're just really pretty.
Oh wow! I had no idea about that. Obviously, I have to get up there and come and visit. That's a definite thing to do.
along with all there's just, like I said, a lot of diversity, even when you think about, it being kind of a flat prairie. You're going to find, again, the further east you go, kind of this changing landscape where you're going to find more rocks and just a lot of variation in the landscape that, between that and the wildflowers, it's almost art in nature of the beautiful things you can find out there.
Now, when you talk about summer, I did want to touch on this. Because it's interesting because you're saying spring. Now I'm saying it's summer here because we're in the hundreds. But what are, when you say it gets hot up there, what is your heat zone when you say that? So it gives people an idea for if they're going out there like in August or September. What are we looking at?
I mean, we're definitely going to start getting cooler in that September, and it's Colorado, so you never know. We can get snow in October. So, but in the summer, it can definitely get, it can reach 100. It can easily be in the 90s out there in July and August.
Yeah, and when you don't have shade, it gets really, sunscreen, big hats, those big white brim hats.
Absolutely.
Yeah, make sure you have all that in water because you never know. I mean, it happens. Things happen. Things just out of the blue will happen when you go out in the wilderness. And I don't want to scare people, but it's just about being prepared. And do cell phones work out there? There's a question.
It's spotty to get cell phone coverage. In some areas, again, if you're on that west side, you're a little bit closer to that front range of Colorado where there are more people. And so if you're on the west side, you may get cell phone coverage reasonably well. The further out east you go, definitely the less coverage you get, and in some places you will not get out on your cell phone.
Wow. Okay. This is exciting though, because to me, this diversity, and then you just being able to be out in the wild, and so to me, I think it's nice to disconnect.
And like I said, it's different, and the further out you go to, it's kind of like stepping back in time too, because you just don't have all of that development that you see in other places. You will see energy development out there, so there are oil and gas wells, both on private and public land. So it's a working, we're a multiple use agency, so we provide for a lot of diverse and different interests, including the cattle grazing that takes place, that energy development, recreation, wildlife. It's kind of a place where lots of stuff is happening.
Yeah, so it's that balance again. Yeah, a little bit of everything, and that's a difference in regards to like the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management, wildlife refuges, and like the National Park Service. There's that little balance of difference, and it is a balance that has to happen. So, and I think it's an interesting one because I don't think a lot of us understand all the time when we're traveling around, but it's different. In some places you need passes. So I was going to ask you about that, if you needed permits, because I know we have national park passes that include the forest most of the time, but I wanted to be sure so I don't give people the wrong information when they go out.
All of the only place that there is any kind of fee is if you're staying in that developed campground. And so there's a fee for whether you're doing reservations, which we offer in the summer, or during our non-reservation time, there's a fee for that. But otherwise, there's no pass or anything needed to visit the Pawnee-National-Grassland.
Okay, man. And you were talking about the Pawnee Buttes. And I have to tell you, everyone, if you go to nationalparktraveling.com, just type in Pawnee or type in Weld or Greeley, you will find our interview with Jennifer Finch and Amy Dugan, and a jigsaw puzzle that you can do. It's a beautiful, it's this beautiful supermoon sunset photo of the Pawnee Buttes, and you can do the jigsaw puzzle while you learn more about the region and the gateway communities. And earlier I gave the wrong website out for Discover Weld. It's discoverweld.com, and visit greeley.org are the websites for those regions. But all of it is up on nationalparktraveling.com. And again, the website for the Pawnee National Grasslands is fs.usda.gov/ARP. Right? There we go, ARP.
Yep, that is it. And, we'd encourage folks to visit that that website and look at the map, because the one thing that can happen is you can end up on private land out on the Pawnee. It's not all, there's lots of fences and gates because of all the cattle, but you definitely want to make sure you're on public land when you're out there. So having a map with you is always a great idea.
Okay, yeah, and because you put up alerts there too, if there's any kind of anything happens somewhere, whether it's roads or anything like that, you put those kinds of things up on there too, right?
Yep, absolutely. This year, when we had all this rain, we've had some parts of the bird tour actually kind of flooding and kind of getting a little hard to travel through with standing water. So we've put that up on our website. So yeah, always a good thing for folks to check. And also if we're in fire restrictions in summer, that information would be available there too.
Yeah, it's always good, even like the morning before you head out, to just double check the websites. It is always one of those things because you never know what can happen in nature. So check it out again. I'm going to give it out again for everyone. It's fs.usda.gov/ARP. It's the other ARP. It's the nature ARP. Okay. And I want to thank everyone for joining us here on Big Blend Radio. Our shows air Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and Fridays and Sundays at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. The schedule is up on bigblendradio.com. You'll see the upcoming shows and also where to click through to go and listen on demand. And we always like to close with some music, Reghan. We're going to do a song. It's called Loving the Land. It's from a musician, singer-songwriter, Wally Lauder, and everyone can go to wallylauder.com. And it just, it's our land. And when we talk about public lands and federal lands, this is all part of what we own as citizens of America, right? So there it is. Loving the land. Here it is. Thanks so much, Reghan.
Yep, thanks.
Well, I'm sitting on my back porch, my guitar in my hands, and I'm looking at the afternoon, I'm looking at the land. It's got that honey-colored light, golden rose reflecting from the sun. Steps outside and asks me, what are you doing, hon? And I'm loving the land. I'm just loving the land. I'm loving the land. I'm just loving the land. Got an angel in my corner, must have a Buddha at my side. And if I had any worries, I've left them all behind. Maybe it's the time of day, maybe it's the light. Blame it on the air I'm breathing, but I couldn't feel more right. And I'm loving the land. I'm just loving the land. I'm loving the land. I'm just loving the land. On a simple corner lot in a humble town, waiting for the sun to go down, down. Well, when this land was made, it was made from near and far. Molecules and galaxies and mystery and bits of stars. And I'm just letting go like a leaf to the wind. giving in. And I'm loving the land. I'm just loving the land. I'm loving the land. I'm just loving the land. This land is your land, my land. From California to New York to the Fiji Islands. I'm loving the land. I'm just loving the land.